Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Ask me almost anything. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am here every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone. Most of the time, I am doing my live stream step-by-step screenwriting lessons to try and show you how I write a script by letting you share my screen and watch me work. But every once in a while, I get a big pile of questions, and I think I'm going to take some out and just do an open Ask Me Almost Anything. But for those of you who are watching not live, you are, of course, alive, but I am not. I am recorded. If you are watching me thusly, you can still ask a question. You can go to writingforscreens.com and click on Contact Me, and it will open up a little window that lets you contact me by writing me an email direct to me. If for some reason you don't want to do it that way, you can also just ask me a question right here in the comments of this or any video on my entire channel. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, Roddy, hello, welcome. Let's get right to it because we got a bunch of questions here to discuss. Hopefully we'll also have Roddy or other people ask live questions, but right now I got a question from a fella named John. And he has written plays, he has written stories, he has written scripts, but he feels like it's not going to be acceptable because while he's good with subtext, he's good with scenes and setting the mood and the dynamics of relationships, he feels that everything that he watches is all amped up and hyped up with large, big actions, big dramatic consequences, and he likes to do stuff that's a little more subtle, a little more personal, a little more internal. And so he's saying, I'm a little afraid I lose the heart of my work when I try to fit the formula of big obvious conflicts or big choices in life, big stakes. And he says, so I'm wondering at this point if I should toss it all. Just accept that I don't have what it takes. Maybe slice of life short stories are more my thing. Or if collaboration is my only route forward at this point for movie or TV scripts. And this struck me as the sort of thing that probably a lot of people are thinking and asking. Hey, Javier. Yes, it is an awesome Friday. We're just going to learn. We're learning our heads off. So what we're talking about right now, Javier, is the question of, can you be a screenwriter if what you write is subtle and internal and sort of character-based, maybe not big plot stuff? And this is a really good question because I think one of the first things to do is to sort of think about the fact that there are very narrow rules of the business and very vast possibilities of the art. That is just a fact that the business is working to find a formula that will sell a lot of tickets or get a lot of streams or get a lot of subscribers. Whatever it is, it tends to be big stuff, popular stuff. And also, honestly, the formula tends to feed on itself. In other words, if something has become popular, then other people try to imitate it, and therefore that becomes a rule, when it's not in fact an actual rule, it's a thing that became popular. So one of the first things I would say is you are not wrong to go outside the narrow rules of the business. That is not artistically, creatively, personally, or morally wrong. Does it make it harder to sell to the mainstream industry? Sure, of course it does. I think that's one of the things that you really have to consider is that there's the art of writing and there's the job of writing, and I don't know why anyone would think that they're the same thing. They are completely, any job has its requirements as a job, and any art has its art requirements. It is very unlikely to be able to have an art be your job. Very, very few people are artistically supported for doing their art. They're very rarely can make a living off of their art. So I kind of feel like partly it's the wrong question to be asking. If you want to make a living in the business, then you probably have to at least, to a certain extent, work within the commonly sold things. Hi, Matthew, and hi, Pika Pika. I see your question. I'm going to get to that. The big question about whether or not something can be too internal. There is also a smaller art film industry in which that's actually an advantage, something that's subtle and character based and can be magnificent. However, you have to recognize that the people who are working in that field are not necessarily making their full-time living at that. I guess the main thing that I think is that you have to get good at what you do. Spending all your time trying to fit into a formula that you're going to sell and that's going to reward you seems like a good path for finding a job and a poor path for being a writer. And obviously, you have to, I guess the big thing I want to talk about that is that you have to think about whether or not you want to pursue the professional reality of being a screenwriter. This art versus job thing is a real question because it is a versus. If you want to be a screenwriter, not only do you have to write within the formula, you probably have to get used to writing an awful lot, awfully fast. And furthermore, you probably do have to move to the centers where films and TV are currently being made. And you have to work within the system of getting those jobs and working within those jobs. I think one of the biggest problems I run into here is people don't seem to understand what screenwriting is. It's a job for a company. You don't get discovered as an artist and then people buy your work and make it. That doesn't happen even if you are, I suppose maybe the top 0.1%, like maybe, one or two people have what you'd call final cut as a writer. Like they write what they want and somebody says, I'll make what you write. Everybody else goes through an endless negotiation, an endless collaboration on every script. Very often the plot is changed, the setting is changed, the characters are changed. There's many, many demands made on any script. That's part of the job. When you say, I want to be a screenwriter, you're talking about the job. And honestly, if you don't want to get into that, if you don't want to say, I'm going to put that first, don't worry about whether or not you're going to get, whether you're going to make it. Maybe your work will get picked up and maybe it won't. There's really no guaranteeing either way. There's really no way to tell. I guess that I just feel like it's just the wrong question to ask. If you write something that's good and subtle, you should write that and you should show it to as many people as you can. Hold on. Get good at what you do. If you write subtle stories about farm laborers, write them. And if they're really hitting people are going to pass it around. People are going to talk to you. People are going to say, this amazing story about farm workers is not makeable in my business, but I want to talk to you about being a professional, and then they'll talk to you about that. And then you'll decide whether or not you're going to make it, whether or not you're going to be part of the business. But the best way to make it in the business is to get really good at what you do. Then, if you really want to be a professional, you also have to get good at the business stuff. You have to get good at the learning how that process works, that process of collaboration and negotiation. You have to get used to the idea that you have to write something knowing full well you're going to have to rethink it when some producer comes along and says, I'd like to make this, but you have to take out a main character. Of course, that's another layer. You have to get good at what you do and get good at the business. Do I have the thumbnail on 4 things? I don't have it. I did a video called 4 Things, Things a Writer Should Know. I think 4 Things a Writer Should Know. I can't remember. It's really good. It talks about being, um, if I do say so myself, it's really good. You need to know the business, know the art, know yourself, and I can't remember the fourth thing. Oh, know the world. Know the world. Have something to write about. Have bring in other things. Know the business, know the art, know yourself, and know the world. Know yourself is really the most important. Anyway, so what I would say is, when you find yourself struggling over like, oh, am I going to make it? The only way to know if you're going to make it is to do what you do real hard and real long and keep doing it and keep showing it to people. You've got to keep putting it out there, no matter how disheartening it is, no matter how incredibly you failed before. You have to keep writing new stuff and putting it out there and making the best choices you can. There is no too internal. Obviously, in any particular script, somebody might say there isn't enough physical action here. There isn't enough big conflict. Yeah. Somebody else might see what is great about it. If you really believe that you are writing a good script that is subtle, write it. If you really want to be a professional, when you get done with your subtle script, try writing an unsubtle script. See what happens. Learn that part of it. That's the part where you're being a professional. The other thing I want to come into about this and talk about is the other ways that screenwriting, because screenwriting is weird. Screenwriting doesn't have a non-professional side to it. We're just beginning to discover that, to build that. If you're a painter and you are not a professional, if you don't make a living off your painting, nobody says you're not a painter. Okay? If you do ceramics and you sell them at street fairs, nobody says you are not doing ceramics. For some reason, with screenwriting, if somebody writes a good script but it doesn't get made, they're, hey, you're not really a screenwriter. It's a real problem. One way to defeat that is DIY. Don't wait around for the world to recognize you. Make your own work. If you are not inclined to direct and produce yourself, those are hard jobs and I do not recommend them to everybody. Find people who are. You will find someone who desperately wants to be a producer and is looking for a good script. And once you lower the money panic, people can work together. You'll find directors who will say, you know what, I'll direct this because I get it and I like it. And they'll make it for no money and maybe show it in festivals, and maybe that will be a break. Maybe it won't, but how cool no matter what. So I really urge you to think about DIY. There also, people call it no budget. They call it indie filmmaking, and I want to talk about this. Indie was a type of filmmaking that was sort of discovered in the 1970s and 80s, flourished in the 90s, and became part of the industry. So now indie is actually a Hollywood genre. The people who make indie films that go to Sundance with big stars, those aren't really indie films. They're not real. They're independent of the studios, but they're not independent of the business. Then there's a whole other layer, which is where we are. The layer where you are making your own stuff outside of the business. That's the outsider version now. It should be called indie, but indie is still, they make $12 million indie films. All right. So, that's not really indie if you ask me. Indie is not fully independent anymore. Outsider is what we're really talking about. A lot of other people call it no budget. Anyway, I would urge you to look into that if you truly love writing for screens, because it's one of the few ways to get out of this trap of having to get through the narrow bottleneck, which is the business. It's a very narrow set of rules, and your abilities and your possibilities are huge. So, okay, so let me take a quick... there's more to this. Sorry. The other big question for anyone who's wrestling with my writing doesn't seem to fit the rules is, does it have to be a script? Do you really have to put this in the form of a script? Let us remember that uh, J.R.R. Tolkien did not write The Hobbit, the screenplay. Okay, it became a movie, but there's no reason to say if you have a vision, if you have a world that you want to build, if you have a story you want to tell, there's lots of other forms. I was so pleased to see that John, who asked that question, also writes plays. Plays are something you can do on a small scale. You can also do DIY filmmaking on a small scale. Write those short stories. Write those scripts for graphic novels or games. Write those, whatever form you want to find. You can do a podcast with 3 people in your living room. You can, and if you know how to write and write scenes and characters like a good scriptwriter, that podcast could really kick ass, and that you can do. So I just urge you to question, does it have to be a script? Because the business is very narrow and it's very competitive and often very stupid. So make a choice. Say, I want to try and do this or that, and then figure out that path. That's the job of any artist, to make the choices that feel right for you, that you're willing to gamble on, that you want to spend your time on, and then figure out the path that will be workable. It's not just, I'm going to put myself out there and these 12 bigwigs are going to decide that I'm going to make them $1 billion. That's a terrible plan for anything. It's even a terrible plan for Hollywood movies. All right, so let's talk about Pika Pika's question, which I think is real quickly. Most shows now start with a recap of scenes that are crucial to understand the current episode. Often they're really well done. Who's doing them? The main writer? And the answer is not usually. Usually there's the showrunner, the main writer, the showrunner, the head writer will have someone do it and they'll show it to them. Because those are really editorial. Those are done in editing. They are editing pieces of film from other episodes. They don't write a script for that. They say, they go to the main showrunner and they say, what are somebody will be assigned this job, someone in the writing staff. And they will say, what are the main points we need to remind people of for this episode? Because sometimes it'll be something from like 5 episodes ago. So they'll make a little checklist, and then that person will go work with an editor, a film editor, and they will say, and you want one of the writers because they know the stories, they know the scripts, and they can say, remember that scene where they said this? And they'll go look at it and they'll pull that clip and they'll put that together. That's usually how it is done. Hey, Death Momo. Hey, Maria. It was late. Late. What's late? We're all good. Okay. Javier, a question. Oops, sorry. About that rule, don't acknowledge another movie in your movie. That's a silly rule. I don't know who said that rule. Yeah. First of all, Back to the Future, by the way, is referred to in like 80 other movies and shows. That has become the standard, it's not like this thing. But also The Godfather. The Sopranos does nothing. The people in The Sopranos are conscious of the tradition they are living in. So they're constantly talking about The Godfather and Wise Guys, Goodfellas, stuff like that. So the answer is, that's a dumb rule. Whoever said never refer to another movie, I think you know me well enough by now to know that anybody who says never ever do that, the number of real never ever do's is very tiny. Never ever set fire to your crew. Okay? Never ever make something that's gibberish. Actually, even that gibberish, there's a good gibberish movie waiting to be made. The never evers are very, very, very few. The question is it good for your story? Is it relevant? Is it emotionally believable for those people to refer to that? If you have somebody in 1930s England in a Downton Abbey episode refer to The Matrix, you'll probably have a problem. That's going to be a little weird. But if you're talking about people who are referring to another movie because it's something to them, that seems like a fine idea. That's not a problem. You also don't want to refer to another movie so as to not have to do the work of carrying that idea or emotion. You don't want to say, "Oh, this is just like Casablanca," and then not bother to have your love triangle. That's no good. You can't use a reference to replace your own script. It's something that the characters think about and say. Does that make sense? I think it does. AI or Al, I'm not sure. And if it is an AI, I hope it's not a human AI. I always feel like I'm writing action and rarely writing introspection. You know what? That happens a lot too. And all I can say is, if you really like it, don't worry about it. I was actually just working with a writer who wrote a brilliant plot that was short on character. And I had to say to him, I feel like your script could use that extra depth, taking more time to deal with these people's feelings and making them more unique. However, there is an absolutely fine version of this where these characters are superficial cliches who are pulling off this clever plot. Cool. Lots of, I would argue, I don't know if Ocean's 11 counts, because Ocean's 11, they give some thought to the characters. That's actually why I like it. But there are plenty of slick movies where the characters are really just types. The Rock. I actually like The Rock, not the person, the movie. There's a Michael Bay movie called The Rock, which is about people taking the island Alcatraz jail hostage, and it's full of whacked out characters. They are all kind of cliches. They are not really deep, but I think it's good. Anyway. Maria, I don't see that video in your library. I'm going to take a quick look. I apologize for wasting a little bit of time, but this is what happens when you've made too many videos. All right. So in the tools and craft. Oh, no, it's not there. Maybe it's, oh yeah, it's in process. 4 things you need to know. Let me see. Hold on here, folks. Okay, so I am just going to quickly type this up because I have the power to do this. Hold on. 4 things you need to know. Okay. This, it's, oh, it's, that's really funny. It's got no background. Hang on. Background. Boom. There we go. Things you need to know. Okay, that is the title. I like this one. It's in the section process or being a writer. And the title is 4 Things You Need to Know. Okay, hello, Janae. How you doing? Yankee comment on this one's made out of a magazine article. Yeah, lots of scripts are made out of magazine articles. Cool. Not a problem. Happy to be here. Never plagiarize copyright work for money. Maria knows. She has researched this. She's right. Cool and groovy. Okay, I'm going to take a second here now to go back to my list of questions because I keep on dropping this one. I'm going to go right to it. How do you make characters relatable? This has been on my list of things to talk about. And you guys always ask me so many questions that I never get to it because it's always like last. So I'm going to talk about it. Relatable. There are certain things that you'll hear when you get notes or somebody talks about what a screenwriter should aspire to. They'll often say, you want your characters to be relatable or likable. Or is that person really likable? Honestly, I feel like that is somewhat lazy thinking from the person who says it, because the main thing is likable is relative. Different people like different things. Some people like a very domineering and insensitive character, and some people like an overly sensitive and sacrificing themselves character. To say I like this, like that this is universally likable, really means conventional, traditional, whatever the formula of the moment is for characters and themes and personalities, that tends to be called likable or relatable, or aspirational. Um, and honestly, I would say, there are times we like a serial killer in Silence of the Lambs. We like him a lot. So it does not have to be admirable, it does not have to be inoffensive, it does not have to be nice. I believe that the thing that makes a character interesting, that makes us relate to them, is A, that they have a very strong desire for something in the story, because that tends to give them dramatic action. That desire could be to want to be left alone. That desire could want to be, I just need to get back to sleep. And then there's actually a whole movie called Into the Night. Into the Night, Jeff Goldblum. It's not a great movie, but it's really funny. The basic idea is this guy's having trouble sleeping, and he goes out and he gets involved in this horrible, nightmarish set of circumstances where he's getting dragged into all these things with murderers and gangsters. And anyway, it's called Into the Night. All he wants to do is go to sleep. Likewise, that's such a After Hours. After Hours, Scorsese's movie. The character is a likable guy, but all he wants to do is he just wants to get home. So anyway, the question of what's relatable, I would say, is there a strong goal or emotion that you feel you can relate to, that you feel someone else should relate to? That's really what makes somebody relatable. King Lear is relatable. He's bad. He's making a horrible mistake, but the action of making a horrible mistake because you want the approval and affection of your children is not unrelatable. And very often we relate to feeling pity for a character. That's a completely relatable thing to say, oh my gosh, I feel for this person who is making a terrible mistake. I would say that we can relate to any strongly expressed, consistent emotion, any strongly expressed, consistent desire, want. What do they want? I believe that's the center of making a character relatable, likable, or anything else. What do they want? Because what they want will express an emotion. If somebody wants something, there's an emotion underlying it. And I believe that we connect on that level. I believe we connect to characters who could be very, very different than us, who could live in an entirely different world. I mean, we relate to people in Game of Thrones who are not like us at all. Okay, so that's my answer, is that you make a character relatable by making them want something and expressing that want and doing something about that want and having an emotion behind it. That emotion does not have to be pretty, but it just has to be a real emotion. That's my take. Please see the fights and he told me that was yes, that is true. Absolutely. Hi, Al. Okay, Al says it's not AI. We do not have to fear Al. Why on earth would you apologize for being chatty in the chat? It's called the chat. Cool. So that's great. Yes, Maria, I knew you'd find it. And that's right. We like it when you talk to us. Yay. Larry's here, just lurking, and that's a legitimate action too. I see a bunch of you are here, and I am really happy to have you here. Okay, yes, absolutely. We're talking about The Rock is great. Okay, and by the way, The Rock is in many ways a guilty pleasure. But you know what? What's wrong with that? Hey, I right? Yes, I agree. Relatable. I think likable is the least useful criticism I've ever heard. To say I don't like a character tells you more about you than the character. And when somebody, I often hear, well, somebody, a lot of people criticize, and this actually happens. One of the things you should think about as a writer is start to listen to how people talk about movies and shows. Just they trash them and they express absurd opinions like, oh, I don't believe that that would ever happen, or oh, I hate when people do that. And you know, the thing is, imagine if you were saying that when the person who wrote it was sitting next to you. It changes your mind. And here in Hollywood, that happens a lot. You have to be really careful in Los Angeles when you're out at a restaurant or something about what you say, because you never know who's sitting around who actually worked on the things that you are just dismissing out of hand. So I would suggest that you think about that when you are critiquing things. Think about what you are saying about yourself and what you are saying about the work. The best critics are the ones who stop talking about themselves and talk about the work. That's what's helpful. All right. They're likable because their goal is simple, and everyone believes everyone has that. Yes. Yes, they are. Honestly, every goal, if you look at it, works down to a simple emotional truth. I believe they're picking up the trash bins outside. Anyway, so yes, you can relate to characters who are dark and twisted. Okay, so I'm going to get into my next topic here, which is, this is a fun one. What other parts of filmmaking should a screenwriter learn about? This was from Andreas, and he was talking about, I had mentioned Judith Weston and learning about method acting and directing, and Andreas said, I have often thought it might be worth doing an acting class to be a better screenwriter, which it could easily be. That could be good. Do you think there are other film or TV disciplines that screenwriters should look into to improve their scripts? And this is great. This is really something to think about, because it is so tempting to think that you need to learn the other arts of filmmaking, because writing is just a part. And that's one of the hardest things for writers to really get through their head. It's not like you just write something and then it gets passed on to the next phase and the next phase. They all kind of do blend together, and you can get tempted to say, I need to understand directing, I need to understand editing. I think it's good. If you ask me, the three, you know, I'm gonna write these too. I'm typing in the wrong place. Hold on a second. Directing. Oops. Editing. First AD, line producer. Okay, these are the three jobs I think that writers would benefit most from understanding. All right. Let's see, can I do this? Boom, 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 boom. There we go. Directing, editing, and weirdly, first AD or line producer. These are the jobs. Now, the thing about this is that you do not want to learn how to do these jobs. That's way too much work. It is really, really hard and complicated. These are immensely demanding and complex fields. You do not need, as a writer, to know how to do those jobs. But what you do need to know is to understand the basic principles behind what they do. Not every detail, not all the professional levels of it. You just need to understand certain things. The main thing that you learn from editing is storytelling. If you just watch somebody edit dialogue or edit a scene, then you learn about editing. You learn about the fine points of how you make two cuts come together, two pieces of two shots come together in a cut. That is the edit. But the editing of a whole story is storytelling. And it is amazing when you watch different cuts of a movie, when you suddenly take out a line or a scene, or you flip things around and move them, that's when you understand the writing part of editing. Likewise, I'll tell you what you really need to learn about directing: what can and can't be controlled. Because everyone thinks that a director controls everything. And the truth is, a director cannot control anything. The director has to learn how to get other people to do things and constantly be steering and shaping them. But the main thing that you learn as a writer is to give up on that image of control, which writers all project onto directors. And then writers are all frustrated when the director is not controlling it as much as they'd like. The truth is, directors are more about shaping and inspiring and steering, but they are not controlling. And so the thing that you want to learn about from directing is what can and can't be controlled. And the thing that you want to learn about from a first AD and a line producer, they're the people who do the budget and the schedule. And once you learn the weight of scenes, once you learn that a scene that is shot outdoors in the rain is going to take 2 days longer than a scene that's inside, that's really important when you casually write, exterior rain, he screams above the thunder, I love you. Really think about that. Really think about that to learn how those jobs work. Now, this is what I'm going to tell you, which is really important in this whole discussion. Once again, the best way to learn these things is not to take a class in them, but to try doing them a little or working with people who are doing them. If you don't want to direct, cool, you don't have to. Work with a director. That's how you learn what they do. Work with an editor. Write a short, have somebody direct it, have somebody edit it, and be with them while they do it. Watch what happens when the line that you knew exactly how it should sound and the director can't get the actor to say it exactly that way, because that's not their job. Their job is not to make somebody say something exactly a certain way. Their job is to make them say it the way they say it. Their job is to make it come alive and work in a flow. And when you think, oh, I know exactly how this should be, you're writing something that can't be directed. So once again, I urge you to learn a little bit about the process by doing a little bit of the process. It's amazing how much, even like a crappy, if you just took your phone and a bunch of friends and said, I'm going to set about to make a movie, a short movie with 4 scenes in it, set in places that you already have, like your house and your friend's house and your car. And you filmed it with your phone and the sound is terrible and it looks like crap. The very process of figuring out the schedule and the budget, which you would have to do in order to do that, you'd begin to learn, oh, well, I've got scene 1 here and scene 2 here, but then scene 3 is back here. So I got to shoot scene 1 and 3 the same day. And then I'll shoot scene 2 another day. That is really, really helpful to learn. It is really helpful to try to see what happens when you give your script to a director. They can be a bad director. It doesn't matter. This is not about success. This is not about calling card. This is not about proving yourself. This is about learning by working with these arts. And I really, really, really urge you to learn about those things. The 3 things again are directing, editing, and first AD and line producer. Those are jobs which you would learn if you were to make your own DIY short. There are tons of videos out here on YouTube about how to do DIY. Maybe one day when I get finished with the script we're doing, I'll do some videos on that. But right now, it's just too big a topic. All I can say is I urge you to learn how the process works by doing it the worst way. Do the crappy, it's like you really learn about theater when you try and do a play in your garage and you get 5 people to watch it and there's no fancy anything. That's when you really learn what theater is. You really learn this stuff I'm suspecting you can hear that. You really learn it when you don't have special effects and professional crews. That's when you honestly learn how to write a script that will work. Because if you can write a script that non-actors can do that still makes sense, you are a good screenwriter. So, all right, let's see. What do you think makes a character's action unbelievable? This is an interesting question. I would say unbelievable comes from inconsistent. Like if they have one goal in one scene and then in another scene they are acting against that goal without a reason for the change, that's when we tend to find things unbelievable. What's interesting is that scale is not unbelievable. You can be over the top and believable. Lots of great performances, lots of great characters are nuts, and it doesn't matter. They can be believable is not reproducing reality. Believable is consistent and emotionally coherent. I believe that is what makes a character believable. Ideally, I think it also helps to make something believable if they in some way indicate what they are trying to do and why. It isn't necessary. You can do stuff where it's subtext, where they're doing stuff and you don't really know why. But if you really want to make something believable, it's not a bad idea to make, in some way, have them express what they are trying to accomplish and why it's hard and why they care. Those things tend to make things believable. It's a great question. All right. Maria has asked me a lot. Maria's asked you a very specific question, but I'm going to answer it. Finish the first draft. Yes. Should I start to outline? Yes. My belief is, the question is, if you finish something, should you move on to the next thing? At least partly. And I believe yes. I think the best way to get perspective on your own work is to do a new piece of work. There is something about it's like it rinses your brain. If you let go a little bit, because when you're writing something, when you're creating something, it's the world, it's everything. There's a moment of intensity when your whole life means nothing compared to the work. And then at a certain point, you have to step away from it because the people who are observing it are not that way. You have to find out if your passion for it and your understanding of it communicates to someone who's just wandering by. That is best done by stepping away, starting something else. You don't have to finish another thing, but just take a day or two. Get your head into something else to where that's really important. And then you can wander by your own work and see it as other people do. You know that feeling, which is devastating often, where you catch yourself in a reflecting surface that you didn't know was there when you walk past a store window and there's a mirror in it and you see yourself? That's the feeling you need to get when you are looking at your own work, is seeing it as you would see someone else's work. Yes, I am a big fan of understanding acting. The only reason I didn't mention it is because I had talked about this all came from my saying that it would be useful to know Judith Weston's book, Directing Actors, which is about actors and directors. Okay. I often feel actors should have some details to go on. Directors and actors, as a writer, they should know what details they need and what details they need. Yes. Truthfully, this is real. Many actors believe the first thing you do when you get a script is cross out all the stage directions because they don't want to be told what to do or what to feel. This often is them not knowing what's going on. But there are people who do that. In fact, I have heard that Christopher Walken actually crosses out the other people's lines. He learns his lines, but he doesn't want to memorize what's coming at him. I think, by the way, that's brilliant. If you can handle that, holy crap. No wonder his acting is so exciting. Anyway, but very often, the actor will not care. In fact, will feel they need to not know what you think they should feel or do or think. You can put it in. They'll just cross it out sometimes. Some of them will love it. They love to talk about it. Some of them hate. It's hard to do. Okay. Um, yes, the trash is gone. That's it. Yay! I won over David. Um, okay. Um, this might be outside the scope of this video. It's okay, Al. You got some cred. I'm curious about. I write short stories, but I want to write a script. Do I have options as someone who lives very far from Hollywood? Um, that's a tough one. You have options in a certain sense. Realistically, to become a professional writer, you will eventually have to interact with the business on a daily basis. Now and then you get someone who's like a famous Broadway playwright who will say, I'm going to come in for 2 weeks and then I'll do the rest of the work from home. But realistically, even if you were Zooming, you would need to be engaged with the business pretty much full time. It's just not a part-time job. Screenwriting is not part-time and it is not independent of the business part. However, you can write scripts and submit them to contests and festivals and assorted things like that from wherever you are. And that's how you get good. That's how you break in. That's how you start to see if people are responding well. Do be warned. This system of mass submissions, of having sites where people, like everybody submits their scripts and then they choose a few and they say these are good and these are bad, those are kind of tainted. A large number of the people judging those festivals and contests and stuff, they don't know what they're talking about. Or rather, they don't know what they're talking about any more than anyone else, and it's just their opinion, which is really the way the business works, except their opinion's backed by checks and jobs. However, it is a good way to find out if you're kind of getting somewhere. If you submit and people are like, I didn't understand this, or so you submit your stuff to a festival or a contest and they say, that was pretty good. I liked that. It may not win, but I put it up there in the first round or whatever. That's valuable. That means you're doing something right. And that's worth doing. So that's what I would say is you have options until you get serious about the professional part, which you should not do until you know a lot about it. That's what I would say is if you haven't spent a few years writing scripts, multiple scripts, and researching how the business works, podcasts, videos, the Writers Guild has a whole website with tons of panel discussions. There's so much information there about how to be a screenwriter, way too much, frankly. And the job of it is a job. It's a full-time, demanding, competitive job. Okay. Hi, Sergio. Hi to Chile. Chile. Yes, that's okay. Yes, storytelling is, and DIY. Yeah, I am a big one for wherever you are. The coolest thing is, and this is new. This has only happened in the past 20 years or so. You can make anything. Like when I started out, I'm not going to go too much longer on this, but I gotta go a little. When I started out, you couldn't even get sound and image together. You could make a silent film. You could take a Super 8 camera and I even have here my old Super 8 camera because that's what I started with. But you couldn't get sound. You couldn't get dialogue. So you had to make silent films. The professional equipment required to make a movie was inaccessible until the late 90s, really the turn of the century. That's when you began to get video that you could edit and tinker with. Now, that's on your phone. That comes hardwired into everything. You can make stuff. You just have to learn the art of it. You have to learn the art of using a fixed lens. You have to learn the art of how to get the sound. But it's all doable, which is remarkable. And what's more, you can put it out there. That used to be the other problem. How did you if you actually could make a movie, how do you get to play it to where people can watch it? Now, you can put it on YouTube tomorrow. So, okay. We're gonna be stopping soon. So let's hold up on more questions. This is about cross dialogue with the rest of the characters. Is it like improved dialogue or has it deeper meaning? Cross dialogue. I think when you mean like people talking over each other, or I'm not sure what that means. Okay. Hello, Kene from Kiev. We're with you. We are supporting Kiev and the Ukraine in its independence. Just wanted to say that in case it makes any difference to anybody. Yeah, you're more than welcome. I'm glad that you guys are watching. Yeah. How do you hold? Okay, this is going to be our last question. It's a goodie. How do you hold your interest on a project long enough to finish it? I would say two things. Oh, it's sort of the same question here. I'm gonna combine these together. I write. If you have a ton of ideas to write, how do you choose which? All of this comes down to the same thing. It takes practice to learn to figure out what you care about. I have a video that I strongly suggest you watch about this called Instinct, because instinct, weirdly, is not instinctive. Learning how to trust your instincts as an artist takes time and work and conscious practice. But I would say the way that you hold your interest is by learning to trust your instincts, learning to identify your instincts and say, is this worth it to me? If for some, and likewise, which of many projects, is it worth it to me? Then the other thing that's going to come up for either the choice of which project or how long to stick with it, the question is come, are you asking that because you're feeling doubt? If you're working on a project and you're like, oh, I've decided this isn't good, don't trust that. It is better to finish it and find out if it's good or find out why it's not good. But if you find yourself not finishing things, then you have to distrust that instinct. You have to learn that the feeling of losing interest is something to stop and think about. Why are you losing interest? If you liked it originally, is it that you're not familiar enough with the process? One of the main things that helps you get through writing scripts is having written scripts. If you haven't finished 4 or 5 scripts, you can't really judge whether your script is worth writing. You have to finish a bunch of them before you know how to judge whether or not something's worth doing. So what I would say is try to pick out some things that you just feel good about, as good as you can in the moment. Maybe take a couple of weeks to decide that. Keep asking yourself, next day, do I still feel that? If you do, then stick with it and get it finished. It is more valuable to learn the process of finishing something than the better thing that's going to come along when you stop writing something. Okay. All right. So everybody, so that likewise is for the choosing. If you've got a ton of things, you're going to say, there'll be certain rational things, like I think this one can sell, or I think this one will attract a niche audience, or there's lots of reasons to choose something. I think this one will piss off my friends, whatever it is, you decide that you want to do it. There's a pro and con list that you actually choose from, but there's also that feeling. I am interested in this. I want to see this as an audience. I think it's cool. And so Sadie, somehow or other, you thought that when you started it. Somehow or other. And it's really valuable if you're losing interest to stop and say, why? What was it about this? Oh yeah, that scene where she breaks down crying when she sees the goldfish. That really, I feel like that's going to be a great moment. Sometimes you write a whole script just to get one line, one moment. And you need to keep in mind that that's worth it. And then you keep yourself interested by sticking to the process, the scene by scene nature, the challenge of how am I going to make this piece work? I would advise, I hate to suggest watching more of me, but watching me do my step-by-step thing. Because I've been doing this for months and I got to keep writing new scenes every day. it's sort of useful to say, what do I like about this? And finding within the moment, within the scene, within the character, in that one beat, something worth doing. Gosh, you guys are all chatting a lot. Cool, cool, cool. Yay. Love my advice. Yes. Okay. Yes, exactly. That is exactly why. And you are welcome. And please ask these questions again. Like I'm going to go soon, but I just want to say, oh yeah, that's right. Small steps. This is a big one for us. Small steps is really helpful for keeping yourself going. Because that's really what it is. Every little bit of work is doable. And if you can find something interesting in every little bit, even if it's just, oh, I managed to get them in and out of this room and making this point, that's cool. Yes. If you've got an idea, I'll tell you, I often will choose the thing that I'm a little scared of. I think that that's pretty cool. Instinct. Learn about your instincts. My best work came when I thought, do I dare do that? That's it. Yes, you're going to see me Monday. I am going to do number 100 of the step-by-step. And now I'm going to sign off. I'm going to do my traditional sign off, and I will see you Monday for episode 100 of Step by Step. Go write something.